We are live. Let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome back to another live and amplified Indie Fusion podcast. I'm your host, Tom Collette, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest joining us. We have Audra Watt. How's it going today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. It is almost time for me to come out to Nashville. I'll be out there in about a month, so I'm excited. I'm just finalizing some stuff, so.
Good. Get you some boots and some hats.
Well, I probably should because I'll be out there for CRS in February, so I feel like that would be the place to wear it. So
absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Excited to talk with you. Excited to get to know you a little bit. How's everything going in Nashville? Nashville treating you all right?
Absolutely. I've loved being in Nashville. As a grown up, I was lived here as a college student, and it was such a vibrant scene back then. And now there's something new every day, a new restaurant or a new place to go, and it's just really, really fun and exciting. Great place to raise a family. Just a fabulous city.
Nice. Now, how long have you been back in Nashville?
I moved to Nashville with my family in the summer of 2021, spring of 2021, which is a really interesting time to buy a house in these parts. The demand is really high. So we're lucky that we found a place in a good school district. So yeah, coming up on 4 years.
Nice. That's really cool. I for whatever reason, it's like every time I ask that question, it's always like 2020 right before the pandemic or like mid 21 right after the pandemic ended. And I'm like, okay, I'm seeing a trend here.
Yeah. If they bought it before the pandemic, they're doing really well financially.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For sure. So you're originally from Oregon, correct? But you kind of moved around a little bit?
I moved around. Wow, I'm impressed. Yes, I originally was born in Oregon. I lived in Corvallis, Oregon, which is a small town that has OSU, Oregon State University. Okay. It's an agricultural community, and was born there and lived there until I was about 11. My dad worked for Hewlett-Packard at the time. He was in business, so that's what kind of brought us around the country. And we moved from Corvallis, Oregon to northern New Jersey when I was in 6th grade, and lived in an area in Bergen County, which is almost metropolitan New York. It's about 45 minutes south of the city. And lived there. And then the company that my dad was working for consolidated their world headquarters to Memphis, Tennessee. So right after I got really used to a whole new life, we uprooted again and moved from northern Jersey down to Memphis, Tennessee. And so that's really where I feel like I'm from. I spent the most of my life has been in Memphis. I was in Memphis all through high school, and then went to Nashville for college, and was in Nashville for 4.5 years, and then went back to Memphis to work, where I got married and had a kid and had another kid. And it wasn't until my job brought us back to Nashville in 2021 that we made it back. So it's a pretty long span. I left Nashville the first time in 2005, and now here we are, 2025.
Nice. That's really cool. Yeah, I found out that you were from Oregon. I was like, I have no idea where that city is, so I'm not I have no idea how to pronounce it, so I'm not even going to try and butcher it. But do you feel, where does like music start to come into play in that mix? Is it like once you kind of get into Memphis that it comes to play, or was it something that you were always kind of interested in?
Always interested in. I can remember my first memory of plucking at my little play piano. I was about 3 years old, where I would start to kind of hear songs. And so I started actually on the fiddle, not the violin. In Corvallis, Oregon, it's a fiddle. I think down here as well. When I was 4 years old, my mother had a friend that she was taking painting classes from, and the daughter kind of a swap. So I was able to take fiddle lessons lessons. So that was my first instrument. And then when I turned 6, I started taking classical piano and really, really loved it. And I took piano all through as a young child. And then when I got into middle school in New Jersey, that's where I picked up the woodwind. So I went through a long woodwind phase. I played the oboe. And the oboe brought me into symphonic and orchestral ensembles, which was amazing. And that carried through into high school where I played oboe and then English horn in my school concert band, as well as other different ensembles, including the Memphis Youth Symphony, which took me on a tour to Europe when I was 16 years old. Wow. That was super cool. And then I also played saxophone, marched saxophone in marching band, and then still played keyboard in the jazz band. And then I started picking up guitar kind of late in high school. And when I got to college in Nashville, that's when the guitar kind of became a more bigger part of my life, really just because it was like inconvenient to have a piano in your dorm room and like no one wants to hear the oboe. You know, when you're a 19-year-old. So yeah, music has always been a part of my life. I've not really been a vocalist though. That I would say is newer. I've always been an instrumentalist and a songwriter, and I've only really recently, I think, become really, at one with my singing. Besides in the shower, that's been constant.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people sing in the shower. Just some people aren't going to say they do. So
I will absolutely own it. I sing in the car, in the shower. If you are unfortunate enough to drive by me on Highway 40, I will absolutely be doing top of my lungs karaoke to Celine Dion or Shania Twain.
Nice. I love it. I love it so much. So going through school system or the school system like it's prison or something, but going through school, did you think like doing the more classical music stylings, did you think that was going to kind of be your thing, or was that always just like, okay, I'm doing it in school because it's convenient?
It's interesting because, instructors, and especially classically trained instructors, they want to teach you how to play what's on the page. And that's like a really big piece of it. And that was challenging for me. I found myself kind of embellishing, and luckily jazz piano was the place to kind of be free. That's where I could just kind of do whatever. And the chords were just kind of a suggestion and you could just sort of follow along. And so I think that, I always felt like a little bit of a rebel. Even some music teachers would be like, hey, Audra, like you need to just like play it what's on the page. And I'm like, I know, but like, I think my version is better. I mean, it wasn't, but yeah, so I could really feel myself start to kind of butt up against that really rigid thinking about classical training. And so, for me, the idea of playing exactly what's on the page, exactly as written, that felt very confining for me. And so it was hard for me to see a future doing that. And the people that do that are just incredible, that they can actually take what I see as rigidity and actually make it their own. When you hear a clarinet solo that is written one way and you hear it between two clarinet players and you can hear the differences, and that's really spectacular. But I don't think that was really my journey. I think I was just too much of a rebel to didn't have enough patience for that.
Fair. I love it. And so then you said it wasn't until more recently that's when you kind of started finding your voice as a musician?
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because, I didn't really, being a musician, being a band kid, wasn't a choir kid. I was a band kid, but I did like to sing. And, I started writing songs really when I was in high school. That was the first time that I took poetry and overlaid them with chord progressions that I found in songbooks. I'm like, wow, look at this. You can actually make something new. And then in college, I really started actually setting down to write songs. And so when you're a songwriter, it's really convenient to sing because that way you can hear it and you can, so I got more comfortable with that piece of it. And it wasn't, it's funny, I didn't really say like, oh, I'm a vocalist. And I remember talking to one of my friends about this, and I was like, oh, me, I'm a piano player, I'm an instrumentalist, and I'm a songwriter, and like I'm a singer, like a way distant down there. And she was kind of like, how many of our friends' weddings have you sang at? Like how many? Just like
Yeah.
off the top of your head. I was like, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11 or 12. And she's like, yeah, like that's not how it works. You don't just, you're a singer if you're singing at people's weddings.
Yeah.
I was like, you're right. And I really needed to kind of own that. So, I made an investment in some voice lessons and started really thinking about it. Really about 18 months ago is when I started going like, okay, I want to start thinking about my voice as an instrument. And I had a great vocal coach who actually explained it that very way. He was like, look, your body is an instrument and your vocal cords are like guitar strings. And it really clicked for me as being an instrumentalist. And so since then, I feel like I've been able to have more control over my voice as an instrument and not just like, a thing that I like to do. So that's been actually pretty recent.
Nice. That's amazing. So it was pretty much, is it fair to say that Memphis was kind of growing on you musically? Because like Memphis is a very musical city. Like,
oh yeah.
I think a lot of people are aware of that, but also I'm very surprised at how many people aren't aware of the musical prowess that is in Memphis. Would you say that like just living in Memphis, kind of being surrounded by Beale Street and all that stuff was really kind of starting to grow on you, and that's kind of how you started exploring like singing and songwriting? Or
yeah, I mean for sure, like the jazz piece of it, being in jazz band, and I had this experience when I was in high school. A lot of the schools, the Grammys put together this like student jazz band thing where they would bring students from a lot of different high schools together. And the first year I did it, I was a freshman, and it was led by the Navy Jazz Band.
oh wow.
And these just incredible musicians at the station in Millington. And being able to see how they thought about music, it was just so different. And that is really Memphis. And so that blues, that kind of R&B, that kind of soul, I think really is just at the core of my writing and certainly the music that I consume. I mean, I love Memphis rap, which is its own kind of rap. And I love, Memphis blues, Al Green, and some of these just incredible musicians, Isaac Hayes, and I can hear that sound, that Sun Records sound, even now. It really is very powerful and important to me.
Yeah. It's really cool to kind of see the influence that the city of Memphis has had on music just in general. I went to a music festival back in October, and like half the musicians had some kind of a Sun Records cover, like somebody that was in Sun Records, like they were doing covers of certain songs, and it's like, man, that's really cool. We're talking like Texas Red Dirt country artists that are doing like Memphis blues covers, and it's just like, that's really cool. So
yeah, it's a really special place. Really strong music community there.
Absolutely. So did you know, so you, or in 2021, you had made the trip or moved back to Nashville. Did you know that second time, once you were making that move back, that, okay, something's going to give and I'm going to start wanting to like do my own thing? Or was that the furthest thing from your mind?
No, what's so funny about this is that, when I was in college, I was in a songwriting class, and I was getting really serious about it, and I'd recorded a demo. And I'd put it aside, and my life took over. I mean, in all good ways. I got married, I had a baby, and then I had another baby, and I was working, and I was getting promoted, and all the normal life things. And every year I would think, okay, like I'm going to get back to kind of doing some songwriting again, but just never really made it a priority. And when we were moving to Nashville, and we bought a house that just had a kind of a smaller attic space, there wasn't as much storage space. So I had to kind of like just get rid of some things. And I had this like box, like this just filing box full of old lyrics and whatever. And I remember looking at it and being like, okay, like I'm not going to do anything with this. I've been hanging on to this box from house to house to house to house for like decades now. Like it's time to just, and so I chunked it. I literally just threw it in the trash, just popped it in the trash. Crazy if I think about it, but because I really was just like, this phase of my life is over. Like it's a fun thing to say at like anecdotes at a party, or like two truths and a lie, like, oh, I used to write songs, and I let it go. And so it was not something that I thought I was going to do, and it was in the middle of pandemic too. There was a lot going on. So yeah, it was. I did not see this, didn't see it really coming. In retrospect, it's really obvious, but like, I tell you what, when you're in the middle of it, sometimes you just don't see it. And I definitely didn't.
Yeah. Honestly, I think in some kind of weird way, I think by you throwing away all your old notes was kind of setting yourself free to like be who you want to be,
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's something to that. I think that like, carrying on to that, there was this piece of like, I'll go back to that place. Like I will go back to it. And by actually physically separating it, like I wasn't the same person that I was in college. I mean, time has passed, mom, like you become a different person. And so that wasn't who I was. And so I actually think that like, to your point, letting go of that and being like, okay, like music is now, I'm going to write from where I am right now at this moment. And I think I would have probably that's why I couldn't go back, because it just felt like going backwards. So it ended up being probably a blessing in disguise, but it is really, I just think it's funny.
Yeah, I mean, it is, because it's like you kind of hit this point where it's like, okay, well, we're back in Nashville. I've been carrying this stuff around with me for years, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna just chuck it away, and then less than 2 years later, or 3 years later, you start writing and releasing your own music. So
yeah, it's good. And probably it was all like just, angsty stuff that you write when you're 20, and it probably wouldn't apply anyway. But yeah, I think there was something about releasing that. And, I hear different people talk about that, about like the idea that like you should go back and revisit your old material. Like people have different feelings about that. And I'm like, well, that decision's been made for me. So.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, when like, because I've said stuff like that before. Oh, have you ever thought about going back to visit your old stuff? But when I say that, it's coming from a perspective of they've been releasing music for 10, 12 years, and then they've purged some earlier music just because it didn't fit them. And it's like, okay, but it was music that people had heard, where in your case, this was all stuff that you were writing, but it wasn't like fully formed ideas. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's some of them were fully formed. I had several songs that I would play out, and I did record some of them. So I still have about 6 songs that I've recorded, which I still have. I was like, oh, I don't think they're not where I am right now.
Yeah.
I'm just but yeah, it is interesting to see. It's like a lot of people keep journals and diaries. And as a songwriter, to have that kind of like art, that raw expression, which is not necessarily like on the nose autobiographical, but expresses that whatever you were feeling at the time. It's kind of an interesting like little, snapshot and time capsule.
Right. I think it's really interesting because you remind me of myself. So when I was in college and about in early 2013, 14, 15, in that ballpark, I really badly wanted to be a film script writer. So I was always, and even like back into like college, like I went to school for film. I was never a very strong writer, but for whatever reason, I enjoyed script writing, like for feature films and stuff like that. And every 2 weeks or so, I would go to the store and spend $2-3 and buy myself a brand new, you remember the old school spiral notebooks? Well, I guess they're not that old school,
but I still have them.
Yeah. And I would just keep buying those because I was writing scripts like just like crazy, and I'd fill up a notebook. It's like, okay, I need to go get another notebook. And I've still got about 90% of those notebooks sitting in a Rubbermaid bin sitting over here. And it's like, I probably don't need those because 90% of the stuff will fit right here. And I don't have to carry around a 100-pound Rubbermaid bin with film scripts in it. So,
Oh, that's cool. Oh my gosh. Well, don't throw them away. Take them from me.
I mean, I did throw some of them away because they were all like, some of them were like scripts that I had done, so, like I'd actually had produced or produced them. So I was just like, okay, well, I'm going to just toss this. That was probably a stupid idea, but oh well, you know.
I know, right? You know, who knows? Well, I mean, it's done now.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much, pretty much. So you said, what was kind of, you said about a month or a year and a half ago, you started playing around with the idea of doing your own music. Do you remember, was there like a specific light switch moment that
Yes.
hit you? Okay.
Yeah, it was actually like, it's actually, I mean, I don't know. It was very dramatic. I went to the Taylor Swift concert. I've now been to the Eras tour twice, but the first time when she came in Nashville in May of 2023, she played at Nissan Stadium. And, I was at the concert and I was so excited. And in her opening monologue, she said something to the effect of, like, I've been creating music for 17 years. And that 17, that was exactly the amount of time that I had not been creating music. It was almost like the moment this woman had picked it up, like I had put it down. And it like really, like for whatever reason, like that moment really like rung true to me. Is like if I had, not like I would be on stage like that, but I'm like, wow, look at what can happen in 17 years. And like, where would I be had I actually dedicated myself to this craft for this last 17 years? And, I was like, well, I have to do this. Like, I have to be a part of it. And, what I think is so incredible about an artist like Taylor Swift is that, she has given an entire generation of people, a lot of women, but I would just say people all over the world, kind of permission to like, feel their feelings and bring kind of like to light the things that are in your head, but you don't, people don't really talk about. And I just think that that's really, really powerful that a songwriter can do to bring emotions to light that words are really insufficient. And I just, felt this surge of envy and just, like to just be a part of that. And so I really like, that was really a turning point. Like I picked up and started writing literally like at midnight after the show. I started kind of like writing some lyrics on my phone, and that was really like the big turning point, which is cool. I mean, it's also neat for an artist like that, not only to have such reach, to be able to like have so many people relate with their music, but also to inspire so many people, even grown-ups like me.
Right. Hey, you know what though? I dig it. It's one of those things where it's like everybody has those aha moments, and like yours at a Taylor Swift concert is a little bit funnier to me, but that's just, I'm not her target demo. So
I mean, I don't know. I don't think that like, probably it was a long time coming, and that was just kind of like, that was the moment that it felt clear. It was like, this is it. Because I had been feeling like something was missing for a long time. And, when you're in that place and you keep thinking like, oh, I'll have this baby. And then if I have another baby, and then if I get a new job, and maybe if this, and you just sort of keep looking like externally for like, oh, like as soon as this thing happens, like I'll feel complete. And I was like, it just wasn't making any sense. And so it was like, oh, well, like, of course, music, this piece of me that had been there since I was literally 3 years old, that I had been I've been not honoring, like I'd been not respecting, because these things, these desires that you have in your heart, like they're not just there to torture you. They're there for a reason. And I had been really like not giving it the time and energy. And it was there gnawing at me. And sometimes you just need something big and dramatic. And I feel like, I'm like, that's an interesting lesson. Like maybe I could like learn to listen to my intuition, like a little bit less like dramatically than an international worldwide tour by a global superstar. Like it just seems like I could do this a little bit better. Uh, we'll see.
Fair, fair. So that first we'll call it your first writing session at midnight after the Taylor Swift concert. Did that end up turning into anything, or was it just kind of like a
No,
cathartic moment?
no, it was a cathartic moment. And it was actually the song was called Eras. Gosh, I can't believe I'm telling you this. But it was about this idea that like I had eras too. Mine were just different, and it had this sort of different era, and like I'm back to kind of like this new era, and so that idea I think ended up carrying forward, not
Yeah.
those exact lyrics.
Okay.
But I mean, that was that first time I remember I was turning 40, and it's like, well, what are you gonna do for your 40th birthday party? And I was like, I don't want to party. I want to like take 2 weeks off work and like buy a bunch of recording equipment off of Amazon and like record some songs that I wrote. And
Hmm.
that's what I did. So I just like recorded just a handful of songs that I could actually do something with, and started to take them, and then you can have conversations with people. Once you have something recorded, you can actually be like, okay, like here's what I need to tweak and change. So that was but certainly that was like the springboard into this next body of work. And since then I don't think I probably haven't gone a day without writing at least something. Like
Nice.
even if it's just a hook or a lyric or a guitar chord progression or something, but I don't think I've missed a single day, even when I'm traveling.
Mm.
So, yeah, so that's cool, and so it is amazing when you do something every day. Like it does add up, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
So I feel like it's starting to click
Oh
now.
yeah. For sure. It's one of those, to kind of reiterate what you just said. It's like I've been doing the podcast for 8.5 years, and it's not been until like middle of last year where I just kind of was like, okay, or no, it was the beginning of last year because I made the decision at the end of 2023 that I was going to really dedicate myself to the podcast. Because before it
Wow.
was, the first from 2016 to 2020, it was just like, okay, I'm going to do podcasts when I have time. I did about one a month. And then from
Wow. Okay.
2020 to through the pandemic until about 2023, I would get really hot about it and release podcasts like consistently for about 3 months. And then it'd be like, okay, nobody wanted to do a podcast today. So I'm going to just not do them for a little bit. I'm going to take a break. You get what so,
Right. Right.
and then like my mom got sick and passed away. And so I took
Oh,
some
I'm so
time off for
sorry.
that. And so I was sick with COVID sitting in my grandma's bedroom. Like the worst place to have COVID is when around your 89-year-old grandmother.
Yeah.
And I was sitting in her bedroom, just like trying not to pass out, just trying to like, you know, handle that. And I'm like, I think I need to rebrand my podcast.
Yeah.
I
You
don't
just
know.
you had these moments where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, this is the day.
Right. And so that day I was like, okay, I'm going to rebrand my podcast. I went home, made up a whole new brand, redid a thing, made a new feed. And it took me about 6 months into 2023 or into 2024 to kind of get everything set up. But over the last year or so, I've just been dedicated, and yeah, I'm on 100 days in a row right now. So
Wow, that's amazing. Good for
yeah.
you. Oh my
So
gosh. Wow.
and
Congratulations.
I just can't imagine doing anything else right now. It's like I
Yeah.
love these conversations. So,
Yeah, very cool.
but just to kind of reiterate that consistency, and just kind of like once you get yourself into that momentum of doing something every day, it's like, yeah, I look forward to posting the podcast or all these different things. So,
That's awesome.
yeah. Um so here you are now. There goes my washing machine going off, but it is what it is. So here you are now. You're about a about a year into your like new musical adventures.
Yeah, I would say that,
Yeah.
really kind of turned up the heat kind of like in the fall of 2023. And so, yeah, we've kind of taken a lap.
Yeah. How's this whole experience been for you? How actually before we get into the whole experience, how did you go about trying to figure out who you wanted to be as a musician? I think this is something important we need to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, my method for this, right or wrong, has always just been like kind of throw spaghetti at the wall and
Okay.
sort of like see what sticks and try a bunch of things at once. I don't know if this is good or bad. I guess time will tell, but it's just sort of like how I approach things. And so I just kind of like started, seeking out just other people that were doing this, organizations, joined NSAI, joined Songtown, did a publisher's workshop with Barbara Cloyd, who's fabulous. I can't recommend that enough. And, from there, just started, meeting with different mentors and signing up and taking classes online. I took a class at Berkeley online. I signed up for guitar lessons. I signed up for vocal lessons. Like, I just was like, teach me everything. And because I felt like, I felt like I was kind of like good slash okay at a lot of different things. I wasn't really great at anything. And I still kind of feel like that, although I feel like I'm getting more clarity about that lately. Like, I was like, because I can read music, and music is very second nature to me. I understand chord theory. And so melody comes easy to me. And then, but also I love, writing and lyrics, and I love poetry. And so that was also fun too. And trying to find what you're really good at and what makes sense a lot of times is like collaborating with other people, because they kind of hold up a mirror to you, because you can look at yourself and be like, okay, like this is what I do. But when you start having other people that don't know you and only know you in this context start repeating back to you like why they come to you or what they look for when they're coming to you, you start to create a picture of like what you're good at and what your identity is. And it was surprising, because certainly the things that I thought that like were me were not necessarily what other people were seeing in me. And so
Hmm.
not to say that you like should define yourself based on what other people think, but it is good information. It's data, because sometimes people see things that you don't. And I would say the singing, the vocalist, was not something that I saw in myself. I didn't see myself as an artist. I didn't see myself as like, oh, that's going to be me. But when you hear that back to you, like, oh, well, because you're an artist too. And I was like,
Hmm.
what does that mean? Like, well, because you're a singer. And I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, okay. Like you start to think like, everybody knows this about me. And I started getting a lot of information about that. And also feeling like a lot of the songs that I was writing ended up being very personal. They ended up being, I'd like to think they are, somewhat universal, but they're niche. They're going to be the experience of a 40-something-year-old woman who's a mom and married. That's gonna look different, and so that's not going to work to kind of appeal to everybody.
Hmm.
And so I felt like, there were some songs that needed to get out there. And, I was thinking about like, maybe I should record this. And then kind of the universe just sort of started responding. Like, I'd be like, I think it'd be nice for me to start recording. And then I'd get like an email from somebody be like, hey, like, a producer I've been working with, he like reached out to me and he's like, hey, like, are you looking to do some songs? And I was like, wow, actually, yeah.
Hmm.
And so, I just feel like as I started going towards the direction of putting my own music out, the doors were opening or they were coming
Hmm.
to me. And when I was going down other doors, like trying to pitch, it would just be slamming shut, slamming shut. And I'm like, like maybe there's something to this. And so I think that, a lot of times, what you see or what you think about yourself sometimes comes from a misinformed place.
Hmm.
And I think that a lot of the views that I had about myself were from a deep place of insecurity and lack of self-worth, which is not, I mean, it is, but that's not where I wanted it to come from. And so I realized I had to kind of dismantle some of those beliefs that I had about myself, like, oh, nobody would ever want to listen to an artist that's like older, like, or, nobody, like, I had to kind of I had to move on from that because it was
Yeah.
really holding me back. And once I sort of separated out these like kind of external expectations and things that I thought that the world did or didn't want me to do, then I started getting to the truth. But that didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen by myself. I'd love to tell you that, like, oh, I'm so confident, but it was a lot of people like really encouraging me and like helping me, like holding my hand along the way and being like, you can do this, you can do this. And I'm like, I don't know, I could do this. And so I really like give a lot of the credit to the collaborators that I have for, I think, seeing something in me that I didn't. And now I do, but certainly not at first.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been like a existential tantrum a little bit, as kicking and screaming, and eventually, the collaborators and friends were like, okay, Audra, let's get you a snack and a nap, and let's think about this tomorrow. So I'm lucky.
Fair. Like, I mean, and I don't think any of that would have really come up had you not been in Nashville. Like, figuring out the support. I hate calling it a support staff, but like your supporters around you.
Yeah, your team. Yeah,
your team, your collaborators, your whatever. Like, not that Memphis probably doesn't have that, but like, had to go to, I don't know, Chicago, or, like, depending on where your job was, like, I don't think you were going to find that same kind of support that Nashville brings.
No,
So.
I don't think so. And I think that Nashville is special. I mean, in that way. And I I haven't lived in LA or New York or Chicago. And I didn't do Memphis really seriously in this way. Didn't do music in Memphis. But I've at that kind of like, you go to a writer's round and everybody's like cheering for each other. Yeah. And like, there's a lot of just, encouragement that happens in this community. Like, you go, like, you're great, you do it. And I think that is special. And so I think that, for anybody who's just starting out and needs that kind of like little bit of just, courage that they can't find in themselves, Nashville is like the best place to be, because people will like rally around you. And I've done that for other people. I'm like, you put that out, you're amazing. You put that single out, you're incredible. You're better than everybody else. And it's infectious, and you believe it. You're like, you're amazing. And I do. I think that's really unique about this town. And I've been just, it's amazing to have like skyscraper high talent everywhere. I mean, recording engineers, session musicians, songwriters, singers, I mean, you name it. Like, the best mixing engineers are here. Probably there's a studio down the street that's got one of them that lives there. Like, they're literally everywhere. And to have that kind of talent and that kind of compassion and willingness and genuine excitement to work on things, like, I don't know if it's anywhere else, but I'm really glad it's here, and I don't know where I would be without it.
Right. Well, you brought up all the engineers and producers and stuff like that in Nashville, and how they're just always top of the line. My concern for the longest time, when I was first getting introduced to like how kind of Nashville does their things, everybody was telling me, it's like, oh yeah, Nashville is one of the very few places where you could go into a recording studio at 8 a.m. without a song, without an idea, and then at 5 p.m. come out and you have something fully produced and ready to release.
Yeah, that's facts right there. It's pretty crazy.
And in the back of my head, I was like, man, like, what? How do these producers and recording engineers, how do they just keep that passion alive? Because if like, I'm known for doing one thing and all I got to do to make money in Nashville is just throw that curveball every time, it's like, man, I feel like I would lose that passion really quick, but it doesn't seem to happen in Nashville.
I don't think so. I mean, I think that, people, there's probably days that are like more fun than others, for sure. But yeah, I've had every studio, every musician is like, they're like they have nothing better to do but like play the 3 chords on my song over and over again, which is just amazing. And it makes me feel special, even if they're just lying.
Right.
But it feels genuine, certainly.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like, I mean, that's the secret sauce, is it's like, even if this is song 372 of the last month, it's like, no, you gotta, like, there's got to be a certain level of passion of it, or those 372 songs would just kind of be like, I don't care anymore. Like, you tell me what to play,
Yeah, that's true. No,
So
it's a great place for
yeah.
sure.
Oh yeah. So speaking of your songs, it's very rare that I wait 40 minutes into a conversation to start talking about your music.
Oh
But
yeah, let's talk about it.
it's like, oh, we'll get to it here in a minute. And then we just go down a whole nother side road. And it's like, oh, we're 40 minutes in. We probably need to talk about your music and what you got
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So you got a new single getting ready to come out here. What's the story behind it? What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so I wrote Safe and Sound with a co-writer, Jeffrey East, who used to live here in Nashville, actually now is based out of LA. And the idea I originally had to pitch in this course called Write for Recording Artists that's done through Songtown. And I'd had this idea about, feeling like longtime love, long marriages, long relationships was like this sort of fortress and kind of like safe place, safe haven
Hmm.
from whatever's going on in the outside world, and that kind of like how comfort and sameness is actually a really beautiful thing. When the world is chaotic, you really treasure it. And so I'd had this idea, and I brought it to a write with that I had scheduled. And my co-writer also is in a very long-term, stable relationship and really could relate to this. And so I'd had a couple of the lyrics written, and they were a little bit more abstract. And so, he kind of was like, "Yeah, let's sort of go for it." And we picked kind of a unique chord progression to really bring it alive, and wrote the lyrics. And when I brought it into the studio, we had this hilarious conversation about like, okay, like let's make it feel like it's a zombie apocalypse, like over
Nice.
Music Row. Like there's just this energy happening. And then we specifically recorded the vocals very, very flat. Not a lot of like, no vibrato, nothing crazy, just very flat. So that contrast between kind of the chaos of parts of the track and then the sort of calm stillness that's in the vocal was what we wanted to create both lyrically and melodically and from a production standpoint. So it's definitely leans a little bit more alternative rock.
Hmm.
We did put some kind of slidey electric guitars, or as they call it, the 615 insurance, just to
Nice.
make sure that people know that it was done in Nashville. But it is more of a alternative kind of feel. There were elements that reminded me of Radiohead. And kind of some of those alternative rock, which is very much how I'm influenced in my music. So it's definitely a lot of driving guitars, and so I'm really excited. Just sonically, it's going to be something that I haven't really done before. And yeah, it's coming out on January the 31st to streaming platforms everywhere.
Nice. I just pre-saved it
Oh, you're the
before you jumped on.
best.
Before you jumped on, because I was
Oh,
sitting there. I was like,
thank
"Wait a
you.
minute, what's the name of the song that she told me was coming out?" And I think I found. I don't remember if I was on your Instagram or I was on your
Yeah, it's on my
website
link
or.
tree.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay. There it
exactly.
was.
Or it
That's
would
what
be
it
on my
was.
website. So yeah,
Yeah.
if you go to audrawatt.com and click pre-save.
Yeah. I was trying to find. I was trying to find a release date for it. And I was just like, I saw the pre-save link, and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna pre-save it, and then I'll worry about the
Then you'll
release date.
know. I like it. It's next Friday.
Yes. 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 Wow. Oh, wow. That's next Friday. Okay.
Yeah, the 31st is the end of January, but it's a perfect love song for all you lovebirds out there, all the
Nice.
Valentines.
I love it. I love it so much. So kind of looking forward with this, it's all kind of leading to an EP, correct?
It is. And man, we've been busy. We have been
Yes.
recording like crazy lately. And yeah. And you know what? My battery, I'm having a little bit of hard time with my battery. It's my computer is actually not charging. So I may have to switch you over to um, a phone here in a minute.
It's
Uh,
it's all good. We're actually about 5 minutes from being done.
awesome.
So
Okay, we'd
yeah.
probably
So
die in 5 minutes. So if it
okay,
does, bye
perfect.
everybody, just in
Yeah,
advance.
we're
Um,
good.
yeah, and I don't know what's going on. It's like I'm plugged in. Technology, right?
Right, right, right.
But yeah, so we're leading up. I've been recording a lot. Just like
Nice.
in the last several weeks, I've recorded, actually just did vocals on a track today, earlier today. We've got about 7 songs and it is awesome. I am so excited because I think that like what I wanted to create is like I want to be my own playlist. Because
Nice.
I think a lot of people, myself included, like I don't just listen to music by genre. I'm not like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm gonna listen to country and then I'm gonna
Oh
listen
yeah.
to this. Like I really consume music across genres and all at the same time. And if you listen to my playlist, you will listen to like 3 6 Mafia, and then you'll listen to like Radiohead, and then you'll
Yep.
have like, a little bit of Olivia Rodrigo, and like it's all over the place. And so I wanted to create music the way that I listen to music. So we have like a lot of different elements. There's a track that I did over the weekend that's very jazz influenced, very kind of like my old school jazz days. We've got a friend of mine played saxophone and clarinet on it. And then I've got a track that's very a kind of soul R&B, bluesy, a little bit of that Memphis feel.
Hmm.
There's some very kind of rootsy country, with a pedal steel and the whole deal. It's just, about trucks and the whole thing. And then there's some more kind of like alternative and kind of like a rock track that reminds you a little bit of Bruce Springsteen. It's all over the place. And I feel like we've been trying to kind of keep this sort of elements that go across the tracks to tell a story. And the story is about this midlife transition that I've had, going from reinventing your life at midlife without having to hit rock bottom, which I think is a
Yeah.
really important concept. A lot of people call it a crisis, and maybe and it probably is a crisis, but the idea that, the energy of becoming somebody new at halftime, halfway through your life, and making and leaning into it and making it this positive thing about like, okay, how can I redesign my life without blowing it up?
Hmm.
Is something I think is really important and isn't talked about enough. And because I added music into my life, like I didn't, divorce my husband and get a Ferrari and get a tattoo and like, leave everything. Like I'm still, very much have the life that I have, and I've just become more me as part of it. And I really hope to like inspire other people, I mean, especially women, to just lean into those desires that they had as a child, because they're not there by accident,
Hmm.
and I mean, mine's songwriting and music, but like somebody else's could be like, visual art or photography or starting a business or gardening or whatever it is. And I think learning how to incorporate that core piece of you without disrupting everything else is really, really important. And so that's a story that I want to tell with this EP,
Yeah.
kind of through the sonically and lyrically. So I'm really excited. So
Nice.
hopefully I'll find out kind of more information about like how far, like how whether or not to
Nice.
re-record anything and see if to do anything over. But made a lot of
Nice.
progress. So yeah, so
Yeah.
exciting.
I love it. I love it so much. And like the story you're trying to tell is so important because I remember when my dad was like in his early mid 40s, like some things happened and, you know, he kind of went through a transition like that where it was kind of like, oh, I got to reinvent myself. And he ended up getting a new job. Like, he didn't change like industries or anything like that, but it was like a new job situation. And he had a really hard time dealing with that. And I think it's just one of those deals where it's like, it's okay. Like you're saying, it's okay to reinvent yourself at halftime as long as as long as you're being authentic to who you are and you're not changing things for the sake of changing things, because
Yeah.
I feel like in life a lot of people have all these dreams and aspirations as they're younger, coming out of high school, going into college. It's like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a senator, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be famous, just like all these different things. And then life moves on and their dreams and aspirations change. They want to get married, they want to have kids, they want to do all these things. And then they forget about all these original dreams they had. It's like, well, I grew out of that. And it's like, no, those dreams are still there. You just prioritized them differently. And then once they get to like 70, 80 years old, and it's like, it's no longer realistic to go chase those dreams of being a doctor or whatever. then they start having that regret. And it's like, if everybody at 40 just kind of realizes like, okay, well, I'm happy with what I'm doing, but I'm not as happy as I can be. And this midlife crisis, or this, like, whatever you want to call it, is kind of my opportunity to revisit some of these original ideas.
Yeah, I think it's that's the kind of the mistake that a lot of people, and I'm not gonna say that I didn't think that too, is that you change something external and that'll somehow fix it, when it really is like, it's usually internal, and it's usually not even changing anything. It's just sort of like deciding to accept this piece of you that you that I think is there inside of everybody. I think that if anybody really asked themselves, it's like, okay, what would you do if you didn't need the money? Like, you have an answer, and even if you're afraid to say it out loud, like I was for so many years, it doesn't mean that it isn't there. And so I would just, that'd probably be my parting thought, is that, like, even if you don't say it out loud, just write it down and put it somewhere, so that you can look at it and think about like how you could bring it into your life, and feel that experience of being a fully, multifaceted person, like everybody is deep down.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been an absolute blast chatting with you.
Yes, you too. You're the best. Oh my gosh. Keep me posted on your script writing. I will.
I keep getting, kind of re-inspired to get back into it, but
do it.
But if anybody wants to check out your music, all that fun stuff, where's the best place to find you?
You can find me at audrawatt.com. You can also find me on Spotify or Apple Music as Audra Watt. I know I'm really creative. Or on Instagram at Audra Watt. Yeah, that's except Facebook, I am Audra Watt Music. So, get a little bit crazy with your names here. But just look me up. I would love to hang out with you. Drop me a message, say hello. And if you are looking for somebody to talk you out of, not pursuing your dreams, don't call me, because I will absolutely tell you to do it.
Okay. I love it. I love it so much. Well, Audra, I feel like I could sit here for another 3 hours talking with you.
I know. You're the best. Thank you so much.
That just means for the next single, we'll have to do it again.
We'll have to do it again. Well, it's coming. Yes. All right. I love it. That's a promise.
Sweet. But once again, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us, Audra. Really appreciate you, and we will catch you all later.
Bye. Thank you so much. Have a great night, y'all. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Live and Amplified's Indie Fusion podcast. If you'd like to support anything Live and Amplified does, please follow us on all of our social media platforms at Live, the letter N, Amplified. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, YouTube, Threads, any of them, all of them, at Live, the letter N, Amplified. And if you would like to buy any official Live and Amplified merch, you can do so at our merch shop, link in the description below. Once again, thank you all. Have a great day.